Hey guys, and welcome to tonight's episode of Sasquatch Odyssey. Thank you as always for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us for the show. It's Friday night. I hope you guys have had a great week. Super excited to be here with you. I'm always stoked to bring our guest week after week after week, but tonight's a little special. I've got a friend of mine that's coming on the show. Jonathan's going to join us here shortly. Jonathan is a Bigfoot and paranormal investigator out of Alabama. And he's got some amazing stories to tell us. Had encounters with Sasquatch, little people. He's had UFO encounters. He's had ghost encounters. He's had all kinds of crazy things that have happened to him in the woods out there in Alabama and all over the Southeast. So I'm super excited to have Jonathan. But as always, I want to invite you, if you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, please shoot me an email. You can get me at brian@sasquatchodyssey.net. Super excited. I've been telling you guys for weeks and weeks and weeks that we've got a new website coming. The website is up and live, www.sasquatchodyssey.net. Go check out the site. Let me know what you think. You can go over to the premium content section and become a member of the show. Get additional shows every week. Get access to a blog. We're going to do some Facebook Live events for members. It's going to be some really cool content. So go over there and check out the premium content section and become a member and help support the show. Thank you guys, as always, for listening. Thanks for the continued support. I love you guys. I really appreciate everything you do. And like I said, I'm super excited about our guests. We got all kinds of stuff. The show is explicit this week, folks. I put explicit on the show because I drop a couple of explicit words every week, usually. Jonathan and I... we kind of call it like we see it, and Jonathan has a potty mouth, and so do I. So if the explicit content bothers you, I apologize in advance. I'm going to put a explicit notice in the show notes so everybody knows. But the show is explicit. We do drop a few F-bombs, so if that offends you, I apologize, but just letting you know ahead of time. But it is a fantastic show. It's an amazing interview. He's got some amazing encounters, so I definitely stick around and listen to the interview. You're going to enjoy it. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get over to my buddy and get him on the show and get it started. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for having me on. It's an honor and pleasure. I listen to your stuff, good stuff, and thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, man. It's my pleasure. I've been chomping at the bit to get you on the show. So I know a lot of people have probably been to your YouTube page. They've seen your videos. They probably know a little bit about, but let's pretend like the audience doesn't know who Jonathan is. Sort of tell us who you are, what got you into hunting Bigfoot and spending so much time out in the woods, and we'll just kind of walk into it from there.
Cool. Well, my name is Jonathan Odom, Alabama Paranormal Bigfoot on YouTube and on the Facebook group. That's what it is. I first saw Bigfoot with my father. We were fishing in a place called Bear Creek Lakes, and I think it was Franklin County. And we would come around a corner fishing for rock bass, fly fishing actually, and we saw a creature just in the water and turned around and walked up. And we never really did talk about it much for some odd reason. And then I saw it again in the same place with my father. We were wading a little creek, and we looked up, and it was sitting there watching. We don't really know. I don't really remember how long it watched us. You know, these things are crazy. They could be there standing 20, 30 feet from you and move, and then you see them, then you turn, put your eyes back on them, and they're gone. And so, but my dad was a Pentecostal preacher. He still is. And I had just a lot of well-rounded stuff. I had more paranormal stuff than with the Bigfoot stuff. And we didn't talk a lot about the Bigfoot stuff. I don't know why, but we did a lot of the ghost stuff. And then I had an amazing career. I had a very unusual career. I won't talk about what I did, but I was able to retire in my 40s, and that's where I am now. So I was at Talladega National Forest about 10 years ago when I saw another creature, and that kind of got me restarted back in it. And I really didn't start filming YouTube till about 4 or 5 years ago, but I'd been doing it 10 or 12 years before I really started publishing stuff. So a little canned version of my life.
So I want to talk about Bigfoot, obviously, and some of your encounters, but I also want to talk about some of the other stuff that you've seen. And I know you mentioned that you started more into the paranormal. Tell us about some of the experiences that you had in the paranormal outside of Bigfoot.
Outside of Bigfoot, growing up, we lived in a house that had something in it, and that was kind of where it started. And my dad had a good friend that was, he did exorcism for people. He had a deliverance ministry. And I saw some crazy stuff about that growing up that you're actually the first podcast I've ever told this to, but I saw a lot of paranormal stuff, and I saw a lot of people that were dealing with the paranormal that my dad would deal with. One of the things that really sticks in my mind was he had this lady that was playing with the Ouija board. Her husband had recently passed, and she kept telling him, she said, well, Brother Odom, I keep messing with it. And my dad would be like, you need to be careful with that because you're opening a door, right? Well, I remember him getting up, him and my mother, in the middle of the night and going over there and praying. And the next day that he told us, he says, she's got something in her house, just was walking the halls. And he said, I cast it out and it left and all of that. And he warned us that next morning, me and my sister, do not play with this kind of stuff. You don't know what so I was very young, but I also had a lot of paranormal experience at that point. It's very weird to look back on it now. And so we never did. So eventually this woman went to an insane asylum because whatever she brought back was just constantly plaguing her. I mean, my dad told me him and my mom saw a plate of food slide across the table and just shatter. And growing up, I had a lot of paranormal stuff in my other life. And then now with the Bigfoot hunting, out of 10 hunts, like I told you just before, 6 of them, a lot of paranormal stuff happens, whether it's I see something, a ghost, I see something that you can't explain. A couple of weeks ago, brought a brand new AGM FLIR, paid nice money for it, best one I've ever had, put some money on it. So it has a temperature gauge on my thermal. So I set it up and it streams my tablet and we hunt Bigfoot, right? So we were out there the other day and we're over this little glade. We're high up, so we got this glade covered and we found tracks there. And all of a sudden, I've got my thermal on white hot, meaning if it's putting off body heat, it's going to glow white. Well, we see a negative 38-degree black shape go from right to the left. And then it went back across. And my buddy is with me. He's like, are you watching this? Obviously, I'm holding the tablet. That's the first time I've ever seen anything. And that's what I mean kind of in the paranormal. It's not definitely the big hairy guy, but it's something outside the normal. Does that make sense?
It does. And I tell you, I've interviewed so many people that have had Sasquatch encounters. Some here in North Carolina. Bobby up at his property backs up to the Uwharrie National Forest here in North Carolina. And I asked Bobby, he's had these things on his property for years. He and his wife, they just, as he puts it, they just deal with it. It's just something that they deal with on literally a daily basis. And I asked Bobby, have you seen lights? Have you seen orbs? Have you seen...
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I've seen the orbs. Not a lot, but he has seen them in and around the times that they're experiencing some of the Sasquatch activity. And it just fascinates me, man, because so many people have those types of encounters where they see lights, they see orbs, and then they see Bigfoot, right? And I just can't wrap my brain around, because I'm sort of in the camp of that Sasquatch is a flesh and blood creature.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And I don't know what the correlation is. I don't know if it's just this crazy, like some sort of phenomenon that happens independent of one another, and it's just this weird coincidence that you see bright lights or you see orbs and then you see Sasquatch. Have you seen anything like that out when you've been out on your investigations?
I've seen the orbs, and I know it's not firefox, which if you look at this old Southern term, firefox is actually a gaseous thing that comes from mushrooms that float through the air, and it's basically like a light green color. There's different shades. So, yes, I have seen stuff that was not firefox. But when you see firefox, it's equally debunked because it's a certain weird green color. So, yes, I have. But I'll tell you another interesting story. The most interesting story I've took probably in the last 2 years with orbs and Bigfoot, and this includes UFOs. I had a guy from Jasper, Alabama. Is it okay if I tell it?
Absolutely, man.
Okay, cool. Okay, so he was a federal judge in Jasper, Alabama. And he contacted me. He said, I don't care if you use my name. He said, just remember the profession I'm in. And I'm like, okay, cool. And so he starts telling me that he's going to this old strip pit. He's bass fishing, and he's coming back to his truck one night, and he saw a Bigfoot standing by his truck, just looking at him. And he said, well, and I thought, well, okay, that's the end of the story. And he says, but no, there's more that's happened. So he would go back and fish this rock quarry, and he would see the creature watching him at several times on the edge. Now, he said, an odd thing that started happening, Mr. Odom, is I started hearing owls. Now, anybody that's did a lot of Bigfoot hunting will know they will mimic owls, right? So he keeps hearing these owls, and the third time he goes over there, he hears an owl, he sees a creature, and he gets back to his truck, and it's cranked up, the radio's open, the doors are open, the lights are on, and he said it just really shook him up. So he has a security detail attached to him because he's a federal judge. They're protected. And so he said he went back again a fourth time, and he had a period where he blanked out, and then he found himself in the truck. But he always heard an owl before this happened. So what I did, I referred him to a retired MUFON investigator, and he's handling now. And it's almost like an abduction type thing. But you had Bigfoot, you had lights, orbs. He talked about orbs, hearing the owl. And so it's really amazing. I'm like you. I believe Bigfoot is flesh and blood. But it's just there's so many coincidences happen after that. Now, I have another story that will freak you out whenever you get done with your question. If you have another question or something.
I like to be freaked out, so I can't wait. But yeah, it's very difficult for me at times because I talk to people that have very straightforward Sasquatch encounters. It's a hunter in the woods heading to a deer stand, and this thing was standing there, coming out of the woods, chasing a deer or something. It's very animalistic. It's very animal-like, and it sees him, it yells, it screams, and it takes off running like an animal. And then you talk to people like, I've had Ron Moorhead on the show. Ron has had some really sort of out there experiences with Sasquatch. He believes that they're interdimensional beings. And when you talk to people like Ron, it makes sense because I love Ron, and he's telling me these stories and it makes perfect sense when he's telling it. And then, I go and talk to Jeff Meldrum. And Dr. Meldrum is very scientific. He's very straightforward. He's very about the evidence. And that makes sense to me. If the evidence doesn't point you in a direction, then you just don't go there. And I was a cop for 16 years, so I'm all about the evidence, right? I don't believe anything exists because I think it does. There has to be some proof. But it just fascinates me when, you talk, people have told me they've had experienced mind speak. I know Les Stroud, the Survivor Man. He's coming on the show later this fall, and I can't wait to ask him about that because I know he's experienced that in the past with Sasquatch. I find that fascinating. I just don't know what to make of it. So back to your story.
Well, I had an older gentleman that is like my sea daddy with Bigfoot. He was doing Bigfoot hunting in the 80s and late 70s and 90s before finding Bigfoot come out, so he knows his shit. He knows a baseline of stuff that I asked him 1,000 questions and he answers them. He was telling me one time, he said, be careful, boy, when you're looking in that rabbit hole. He said, because the more you look, the deeper it gets. And it actually, it is so true. I've went through an area in the woods before, filming, and noticed slight weird things happening to my camera, and then go through another area and not remember going through places. You talk about portals and shit, that scares me to death. That's why I have a satellite phone. I carry a satellite phone because I go in bushwhack. I go to places where I've never been. Now, if you go to the YouTube channel, there's a 45-second clip. I keep audio recorders, 24 audio recorders in the woods for a month at a time. I have that. My buddy in North Carolina, Bob Trent, he builds these things so they will record for 1 month straight. And so what I do is I go on Audacity, turn the spectrogram on, and I look for certain calls, certain 4 dashes, bump, bump, bump. Usually are train whistles, and you can pretty much read a whole month, probably in 8 or 9 hours work. Well, one of the things I posted the other day on YouTube, I have a clip. I posted a 45-second clip, and you might can play it on here of a woman screaming.
I listened to that right. I listened to that right before I called you, and it freaked me out.
Listen, dude. Okay, 2 years before, go back in time. I posted a video on YouTube where I find this abandoned camp completely destroyed. Got an Nalgene bottle in my cupboard right now that I found it there. It was completely took the rangers there. Now, as a cop, you know there cannot be a missing person until there's a report filed, right?
Absolutely.
There was no file. There was no reports filed or anything else. Where I had that recorded with that 45-second blood-curdling scream was one-fourth a mile from where I did that abandoning. And now it's an active investigation by the feds, by the Rangers, because they told me the other day, they said, hey, man, we found a body out there from your evidence. We need everything you got. So, of course, I turn it over to them. And so I said all of that to say, you're right. The paranormal, you don't know what you're going to catch. In that same area that I've got the recorder where the abandoned campsite was found, there's a little slot canyon right over beside two cuts in the mountain where it drains into this lake. There, I saw, have you ever heard of anybody tell you about a ghost house?
No.
This to me, dude. I was in this little ravine about a mile back. Sides go up. If somebody started chasing me, they'd get me 10 feet from the bottom, because it was that steep. And I was, last couple of summers ago, it was hot as hell. I think it was like 101, and I was trudging down this thing because I had a Bigfoot report I was following up on. And I look up on the hill, and there's this white framed house with the 1900s wood siding. And I'm like, holy shit, that's not supposed to be there. So I sit down, I get a water out of my backpack, and I'm looking at the house, and I'm drinking my water, and I'm like, so I got my satellite phone, pulled the aerial view where I'm at, zoomed in, nothing there. And I'm looking at this damn house probably 200 or 300 yards up the hill at me. And I'm like, what is going on here? So I bent down, I looked at the map, I switched the map to the 1897 to 1917 topo maps, pulled it up because I could overlay the aerial views. Nothing has ever been there. Look back up, and the fucking woods are back.
Wow.
So tell me, what the hell did I just see?
That's wild, man. And that's one of the things I love about you the most, is because you don't hold shit back. If it's weird, you'll talk about it. You know, nope. It pisses me off so bad that there are people that have encounters like this, and they're seeing Sasquatch, they're seeing all these weird things, and places like the BFRO won't even touch it because it's too woo. You know, if you say you saw lights or whatever, yeah, and if it's not a 9-foot, 1,200-pound monkey, they don't want to talk about it. And I just think that's bullshit.
Well, I do too, because it's just like if you think of Southern Baptist, and you look in Alabama and North Carolina, and every 10 miles there's 20 different churches. It's because everybody has a set degree, except everybody has a set degree on something that we know exists through photographs and everything else, yet we still can't prove it. And some people, I have found that a lot of people that I know, that I talk to, that encounter the paranormal, it almost freaks them out to the point they don't want to talk, but they don't realize if you got a room of doors and you're in a hallway looking all the way down 10 feet, and you got a door on each side, that Bigfoot door is right beside the UFO door, and the UFO door is right beside the ghost door, and the ghost door is right beside the ancient aliens and UFO door, and it's all interconnected. And my thing is I retired from a profession that people usually die, so I'm not afraid of people. I'll say, hey, this is what happened. I don't give a shit if you believe it or not, because I know what I've seen, you know? And I think I have found that Bigfoot hunters are like Southern preachers. There's 10,000 of them, but nobody did any freaking field work. And I know that's a son of a bitch thing to say, but it's the fucking truth.
Yeah, it's absolutely the truth, man. And at the end of the day, nobody really knows what these things are. You know,
hell no.
It's all speculation. You know, and I listen to other podcasts, and I hear people talking about, well, that's a type 2 over there that you must have encountered. That where did you even get that, dude? Like, what do you know anything about these things to say one is a type 1 or a type 2 or a type 3 or a type? Nobody knows.
Yeah, exactly. And here's what gets me. And you're a police officer, or I don't know what you are now, but you did 16 years, and you know just like I do. People get mad at police officers that shoot somebody, but they have to realize that the memory is better 48 hours after than it is 24, and that's why they have to be put on leave because their rights are important too. Same thing applies to a Bigfoot thing. I have these old country boys in Alabama come up, want to go Bigfoot hunting, and they're like, "Well, Mr. Odom, if I see it, I'm going to shoot the bastard right out." I'm like, okay, homeboy, we know you're good at the gun, but when you see that thing, I've interviewed over 3,000 people in the Southeast. That is my private reports, and every one of them say, I don't know why I didn't draw my gun. I don't know why I didn't pull up my camera. And it was not, most of them say it looks so human in the face. And so a lot of them, I'm just like, whatever, you ain't gonna do shit. You're going to be like, I've seen it 8 or 9 times in the daylight on thermal, over 20, that I've got badass footage that I'll never publish because I don't need to. And every time, Brian, I was stunned.
That's the thing that people don't realize. When you talk to, like you said, you've done thousands of interviews with people, and you talk to people about them, and every story is almost the exact same. You're not thinking about taking a picture. You're not thinking. I've talked to hunters that have had these things in their sights and could have easily shot them, and they don't. And it's almost inexplicable. But the majority of the time when that's the case and somebody has the opportunity to take one of these things out, they say, I just couldn't take the shot. It just looked too human to me. And I get that. Right. I totally get that. And I do believe people have shot these things. I know they've been shot. I know they've been killed. I think they've killed people. I think that Sasquatch has taken people out. And that's one of the reasons I like to do the show, is to tell people these aren't the friendly forest giants that you're going to go pick flowers and skip through the forest with. These things will kill you, Yeah.
Well, I did a YouTube video where the guy was at his bottom of his hunting stand 30 years ago and found in 4 distinct pieces, no claw marks, no bite marks. It was lignature marks, like a finger. And so the Forest Service workers told me that, because when I see them in the summer, I have a cooler full of drinks and candy bars, and I'll feed them. And because I'm building, it's like a confidential informant. You're building you want this guy to give you information. And so they told me about this. This never made the news. The Alabama Bureau of Investigation was involved in it, but the family even was like, we're covering this up. And so when I'm in that area, in Hollins, Alabama, and I don't care if I've gotten out of my car and I've heard 3 howls and a wood knock, and I know it's coming through the woods. If I have a bad feeling, I leave it immediately. And I don't know. Now, is it that I'm scared? Hell yeah. There's been 2 or 3 unexplained deaths. And I've had old-timers tell me, boy, there's something in them woods. It's old. It could be that. But people don't want to think about that. It's like seeing a lion tear somebody in 2, or crocodiles. They don't want to think that happens, but it does.
Yeah, and I try to tell people all the time, there's a way to do investigations, and then there's a way that you shouldn't do investigations. And these people that call themselves Bigfoot researchers, and they go out and they're smacking trees and they're screaming and they're doing all these things that, some of that stuff is great. It may work. I don't know. But you got to be careful, whatever your investigative style is, because these things could easily, what are you going to do when they show up? If it's pissed off, you got to be ready for that. You've got to know what you're doing. And clearly you spend enough time in the woods that you're still alive. So that's a good thing.
Well, and I listen to instinct. It's like a police officer. I have a good friends, police officers, and they're like, hey, if I'm pulling over a car and I don't feel like I need to do it, I'll call back up. I don't care what anybody thinks. I want to live another day. But it's just listening to your instincts. And then you go have a Bigfoot hunt, you see something weird, like a ghost or whatever. I got another story too I want to tell you about the Hollins area that'll probably, it's the weirdest experience I've had with anybody hunting Bigfoot ever.
Why don't you go ahead and tell us about it?
Yes, sir, I sure will. This is a cool story. So there's this place close to Hollins where this man and woman who are 80 years old, lived in the woods their whole life. They've had a relationship with these creatures, and they come and they watch them, and they'll come really close. So as I approach any investigation, I talk to him 4 or 5 times, because my time is just as valuable as theirs, and I don't want to get no crackpot and waste my time, because what I don't have on earth is Bigfoot hunting time. I don't know how much time I've got. So we get out, we go, and Richard is a police officer in the municipality of Alabama, a big one. So he's just hit his 26th year. He's retiring this year. So he's a big old guy. He's seen some shit. And so we walk up to this old lady, and she said, "Oh, come on in, Mr. Odom." So we go in, and we come back out. We get the key. We're going to go down to her pond where they come to and go. And she said, "Well, let me call him up for you, Mr. Odom." And I'm like, huh. And Richard looks at me like, "Oh, yeah, okay," with a cop look. Oh yeah, I've seen everything, you know. And he's like, she starts hooting like an owl. And she said, "Well, just a minute, they'll be here." And all of a sudden, you hear this long Bigfoot howl. And then the dogs around them, which there was 2 or 3 houses around them, just erupted, losing their shit. And you can still hear the Bigfoot howl is getting closer. I'll never forget this in my day. And she said, "You want to see something else?" And Richard's like, "Well, yeah, let's call them on up to your porch. We won't have to go in the damn woods." And so she says, "Well, watch this." And she says, she looks at me and Richard, and she goes, "Be quiet." And as soon as she said it, every dog within a mile, shut the fuck up. Shut up. And the Bigfoot kept howling. And we were like, holy shit, this woman's a witch. And I was like, and Richard's like, "Dude, I don't know about this." I said, "Well, come on, let's an adventure." And I've got him in a lot of bad adventures that he regretted. So we went down to the lake, which I published that footage where I got the one peeking around the tree. But he showed me, he said, every time I would get around her and her husband, it felt like you were putting an ice pick in my head. And then she started seeing this orb that she could only see. And it got weirder after that. After I got the thermal and I said, "Hey, thank you for inviting me on your property. It was an honor. You definitely have them on here." And she was fine after that. But that blew my mind when that happened. Because I've seen a lot of crazy shit in the woods. I'm not being cocky, but I've seen some nutty shit that I couldn't explain. That just kicked my ass. And Richard was like, "Holy shit, dude." He's like 280, 6'7". I mean, he's a big man. He's like, "Holy shit, I've never been no scared in my life." And I was like, "Bullshit, man. You made some tough runs, you know, going into a scene, and you've been kind of scared." So I guess, I don't know if that's a freaky story to you, but it freaked me out. It was weird.
Yeah, she sounds like the Sasquatch whisperer. That was really strange.
Dude, she had some, listen to me. She asked me, she said, "What can I do to feed these things?" And I told her, I said, "Don't start feeding them," because I see so many cases where they start feeding them and the family moves, a new family comes in, or the people just get tired of feeding them and they act crazy, knock down fences, do stupid shit. So I told her to take peanut butter and go up 10 foot in the tree and screw it into the tree and then screw it in. So if something gets in the peanut butter, it has the opposable hand or fingers and thumb, so it has to unscrew it. And she told me about 2 months later, she said, "They're about to eat me out of house and home. I'm doing it every 2 days, and them suckers are coming and eating it." And it's another place I just need to get out there and put the peanut butter up and see what the hell happens. I mean, stranger things happen, you know.
Very true. So you've interviewed so many people. I know you've seen lots of things and heard lots of things yourself, but what's some of the craziest interviews you've had and some of the craziest experiences just in general with anything that you've investigated?
Well, Mr. Tal Branco, which he wrote a book, Southern Bigfoot Files, which is the guy that I talk to a lot about Bigfoot, my sea daddy. He was telling me about a family in Coleman, Alabama, that I actually got to go investigate with them, and they've had a creature on their property probably plus 40 years, and another one just like it. The problem with this one that is different is its right leg is broke, and on the prints you can see a little curvature on the right leg where I don't know what happened to the leg. This one actually has a lower eye, like it's mentally challenged. I'm being politically correct here. Mentally, you know the word.
Right.
It's like slightly retarded, this creature is. And this family has seen it over 40, 50 times. And all of them. I mean, it's just, and it's the reason they really started finding out about it is one of the little grandbabies started taking food out to it. And then they stopped it because they saw what it was. That one is probably the most interesting because they're still finding his tracks. 2 weeks ago, they sent me a track where he's still around, but his right leg is like a little C, and I don't know what had happened to him. And the face, all of them seem to face that. I've got a police sketch artist from Huntsville that's actually supposed to go down there and sketch it out for me. But it looks like, where they describe it, the left eye is really drooped and the right eye is up. It's almost like it had been dropped on its head or something. I know that sounds odd, but these people are, one of them's a county commissioner, upstanding people. And so that's probably the oddest one that was obviously hurt.
Yeah, that's fascinating, the details. Like, if you're going to make up seeing something like that, why would you make up details that don't really make sense?
Well, they invited me to a family reunion, and I had 150 people there. I didn't know who was who. And they were like, well, just ask anybody. Pretty much all of us have seen it. And I'm like, holy shit, are you kidding me? Oh, no. And that's what was weird about it.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. So what else have you seen out in the woods yourself? What other encounters have you had?
I have found, golly, I've had a lot of encounters. I found my first, that I believe, a ground nest that looks exactly like the ones in, is it the Washington Peninsula of that area? Is that where they found the Olympic project?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I found that just 6 months ago. It was in the middle of a swamp, and it had obviously been built up, which I got DNA from that one too. And I posted a video on YouTube of a white one walking across a field, and we went back and measured, and it was like 7-8 feet tall. Well, this nest was directly probably 500 yards from where this man filmed this video coming across. That was a cool find because I'd had theories about ground nests that I had never been able to prove, and that was one that I was pumped about because it was a perfect place in the swamp. Tactically, you couldn't approach it without being seen or heard. And so that was another good one. Last week's video, I had one pop up on a ridge behind me. Once again, I had to have walked right by the damn thing. And that's what's weird. I published a video on YouTube where I took a thermal of one on old mining land that's north of Alabama, and that one was 10 feet away. I could see its eyes, but I couldn't see it. But I could see its eyes, but I got it on thermal. And then here's another weird thing that happens a lot with the Bigfoot stuff is my battery drained like that, like within 10 seconds. I bent down, changing my rechargeable battery out, looked up, it was gone that quick. That was the first one I've ever really smelled, too, because it was in the middle of a damn summer and it was hot as shit. I think it was about 9,800 degrees that day, and I could smell that one. That's the first time I ever smelled it. But that same area that I go there is the first place really in Alabama, besides Hollins, that I heard wood knock. And but it's in a rural area within a mile or two of each way. There's houses, and the people around it, probably a 5 mile square area. I could close my eyes and pick a house, and they've had a Bigfoot encounter. I don't know if it's the same creature or a bunch, 2 or 3 of them. Usually, when you see one, there's another one. I had the handprint that I got off the door. Sent a DNA sample off of that a couple of weeks ago. The one that I published Saturday that was behind me is within a mile of a place called Man's Hunting Camp, where I got the one that shut the door on me. They got the little tiny handprint. The one video from last 2 weeks ago, and I've had numerous other ones from Man's Hunting Camp. So there, with triangulation with audio recorders and having the audio sync, I can, golly, man, I hate to tell you this. This sounds very crazy. But I know probably a fourth of a mile of where they're bedding. And I just, my instincts are just, so I'm slowly circling the noose a little bit with my filming and when I'm doing my spending nights a lot of times. And getting some great stuff there because I've got them. Now, I'm working on a project that I'm fixing to hit 2 years of audio recordings in that project, in that area. And what is the cool thing about all of this audio that I'm getting is that I'm starting to match up times in the season when they holler the most, which is the spring, late fall. Now, what is the coolest thing with all the data that I'm putting in this program is I can tell pretty much when they holler, when they stop hollering, when they're the quietest, and the other sounds, goofy sounds that I've heard them make. that's something I'm very excited about, because once I get the triangulation of close to where they are, I've got a test. Is this okay telling you about it?
Absolutely, man.
I've got a test. The biggest thing that I do when I hunt Bigfoot, me and my buddies, we'll build a big fire, and they'll come in and they'll watch the fire, and usually we'll get them on thermal that way. Well, I've been studying cognitive tests with chimpanzees that they do with these chimpanzees. Been reading all about them. So I'm wanting to do. My son in there has a little LED strip around his TV that makes it the coolest thing in the world, right? All these bright colors. So what I want to do is make a box with an LED strip and get them focused on that LED strip if they come in, and then have the thermal right underneath it to get them dead to rights, if I can get them to peaking. So I'm very excited about that. And the most aggravating thing, Brian, is I spent weeks at man's hunting camp, and the other day I was there for 2 days straight. Went home, come home, took a shower, cleaned up all my gear, had a phone call. Well, man, we just saw a creature close to man's hunting camp cross the damn road, and I'm like, holy shit, are you kidding me? And it's frustrating as hell. It's like, I'm here. I'm being quiet. I'm doing the things that I know to bring them in. And then I leave, and 2 or 3 hours later, somebody drives by there and sees the damn creature. And I'm like, holy shit, kick me in the head already. What the holy hell? It's just getting them to cooperate. That's the problem.
Right. So all the time you spend in the woods and as many encounters as you've had, have you had any aggressive encounters?
Oh, yeah. I've got a video on my YouTube called The Charge, where I hiked. God, I went really far back, and then I lost track of time. And I got to this place. I heard one. I saw him on the ridge, and then I saw another one. And in that video, which I put, I think it's called The Charge. I don't know what it's called. I'm kind of confusing now. There was a light, kind of like an orb on the right that I was watching. It appeared, and then I had one really young juvenile to the left that approached me. And when he approached me, I was armed. I saw he was trying to come in, so I took my camera and I put it back, and then I got in front of it because I thought, if he's going to kick my ass or attack me, I'm going to get this sucker on camera. I'm going to do it. But he started moving toward me really quick, and he started doing a funny thing with his lips, pulling up his lips. Now, I've been watching a lot of chimpanzee videos, obviously, and I put a round over his left shoulder. I got that on video, and it's on YouTube. That was probably the one I was really worried about. Back then, I had a knife on the right, for my right hand on my shoulder pads for my backpack I could just pull off. And I thought, shit, if he don't stop, he's not going to do anything to me. I'm going to stab him 100,000 pounds if I can. But I got him off of me from that one, and then I hiked back. I'd locked my damn truck. And I locked my keys in my truck. I had to come up under the hood, the back plate, the back bumper, and get my damn key. You talking about scared shitless? I was thinking, yeah, this dumbass here survived a lot of crazy shit. And he locked your keys in the truck when you were coming back hunting Bigfoot. Crazy experiences. Man, I've seen the little people three times, and I don't give a flying rat's whatever if anybody believes me, because I have a witness that was with me, a guy named Bill Real Rozier, hunted Bigfoot with me off and on. We were at a place called Horse Creek Cemetery, and this cemetery has these little houses built over it, and it takes 40 minutes on dirt road to get there because it's way out there. But it's kind of creepy sometimes. It's kind of peaceful. So below this graveyard there's a Forest Service road that goes down to the water, and we went down there to just kind of refill our canteen. Walking, and I'm filming, and I turn, and there's this little man, 2.5 feet tall, looking right at me. He looked just like Dobby from Harry Potter. That was what was freaky about the whole damn thing. And I looked at Bill, and Bill looked at me, and he said, "What the holy hell? There's a little green man right there." And he turned and looked at us and jumped over the embankment. We run to the embankment, of course. And one of the creepiest things that happens to me probably 4 or 5 times a year is when I find little tracks, no more 4 or 5 inches, and there's a perfect foot, and it looks like a baby's been out there, and you're out there 4 or 5 miles back, there ain't no kids running around in diapers out there, and you find 2 or 3 of them. I found a 10-foot section of them before, and then they just disappeared. That is a kick in the head, because there's no babies out there. Now, when you find them at night, it really freaks you out, because you're like, oh crap, I can handle Bigfoot. I can handle aliens. I can handle witches. I can handle ghosts. But no creepy babies in the middle of the woods. Hell no. I mean...
Yeah, draw the line at creepy babies.
No, but it's crazy when you see things like that. It's like, because you're a police officer. I mean, I did work where you've had to have everything right, and it's almost like it's a crack in the head mentally with a glass bat, and you're like, what the hell happened? What is that? Because with me, I know there's no babies out there. I know this. And it's just whenever I find that, the last one I found, my buddy Terry Walker from Springfield does a lot of Bigfoot. He saw them, and he was like, holy shit. He called me the next day. He's like, dude, what the hell was that? I'm like, I don't know, Terry. This happens sometimes, you know.
I mean, what do you make of, I've heard people talk about like the little people like that. And it's, I don't know if it's, I mean, I have theories about possibly being aliens because nothing else, there's nothing else that really you can check a box and say, yeah, that's probably this.
Yeah. I talked to, there's an elder at the Cherokee tribe in North Carolina. I forget what it is now. I got 3 of his books. He signed them for me. He got to watch my YouTube channel. We went up there on vacation one time, and I got to meet with him for 3 days. The first thing he told me, and also some people out west told me this. They're like, Mr. Odom, if you see them little people and you start hearing your name called, which I've heard my name called, but I haven't seen little people, he said, do not mess with it. And when he told me that, it kind of freaked my ass out a little bit because I've seen that shit 2 or 3 times, and I've heard things. You know, you're thinking, what the hell? And then I play my recording back on my cameras, and I'm like, I can hear it plainly. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know what it is. It's an oddity. But I also believe if you spend more time in the woods, you notice more things.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, we're all so connected with phones and computers and televisions. And I can tell I live on 40 acres here in North Carolina. And when I take time on just a couple of off days just to spend more time out in the woods, hiking, walking, whatever, you start to notice things that you don't normally notice because you're sort of unplugged. And the more time you spend in the woods, you can smell things, you can see things, you can hear things that you normally aren't able to do. And clearly you spend enough time in the woods that you're sort of in that zone all the time. So I can only imagine how you're able to pick up on things that most of us would probably miss.
But you know, I'm not afraid to admit I don't know shit about Bigfoot because every time I think I do, it changes. Now, do I have some theories that I can talk to a person when I'm interviewing them and I know they really have them, but the things they say that I've experienced, 100%. But there's some things in the woods. I mean, I'm okay saying them. I don't know. I mean, it gets stranger as the journey goes, and I'm constantly guarding myself not to be cocky with Bigfoot, not to think 100 other humans are good at it. But with Bigfoot, the best I've ever seen. There is a respect that I think that I admire it because there's times that I've walked by it with cameras and got it, but I had no clue it was there because they're motionless. And to me, I don't need to prove anybody, I really don't need to do YouTube, but the only reason I keep my YouTube is so when people in the South hear something, I get a chance just to investigate it because I've got some good investigations like that, you know, and it's just, I don't know, it's a passion. I never thought I'd be doing it, but I love it, and it's just, it's a crazy world out there if we just take the time to stop and just enjoy the outdoors.
Yeah, man.
I feel like I've rambled tonight. Have I rambled tonight?
No, it's been great. So that's one of the reasons I started the show is I started out I wanted to do as many North Carolina, Southeast sort of sightings because I think, you know, there's tons of evidence out there, right, for Sasquatch. We've got the Patterson-Gimlin film. We've got DNA evidence. We've got footprints. We've got casts of footprints. We've got very good video. That's the other thing that pisses me off about the Bigfoot community is everybody wants proof that Bigfoot exists. Then when somebody puts forward great videos or great foot cast prints, whatever, oh, that's fake. It's too good.
I agree with you 100%. 100%.
And there's so many people that I've talked to that have phenomenal trail cam pictures. They've honed their skills on how to, you know, I had Bobby from Uwharrie National Forest in North Carolina on the show. And he was like, Brian, people that tell you that you can't get a picture of these things on trail cams is bullshit. You just got to know what you're doing. And he's shown me pictures that he's caught on trail cams, and I'm like, holy shit. But he won't show them to anybody. You know, he don't want to be called a hoaxer.
Oh, yeah, because, you know, for every well-known one, you've got 20 underneath the radar. I know Pat Rance from Florida. I mean, there's so many different ones. They're like, I got footage. He's got footage that'll kick you in the damn head. And he's like, well, I'm not going to publish it. I know they're real. And you're right. And I tell people that a lot. Bigfoot's been filmed hundreds of thousands of times. People are so stupid and so harsh with their evidence, or you know the Bigfoot community, how they can get sometimes.
Oh yeah, man. By the nature of the business, I spend a lot of time in Facebook groups, clearly trying to, the hardest thing about doing a show like this is actually getting people to come on and talk about their stories. You know, I talk to plenty of people offline that don't want to be on the show. You know, they just want to tell somebody about their story, but they don't want to share it on the show for a myriad of reasons, I'm sure.
Right.
But it's tough to find credible witnesses that want to share their stories, you know?
Oh, yeah. And you treat them people like gold. I mean, I got 3 places right now that I know I have an 80 or 90% of chance of getting the creatures because I know they've been on the property for so long. And I'll protect them people to the death. If they need food, if they're on stuff, they call me up, I'll come. But it's just like if you're working in confidential informant at CI, you're going to take care of that person, and you're going to. But you know, Brian, what gets me is I'll have people approach me, and they're like, "Man, I don't want you to think I'm crazy," and I'm like, "Dude, I got about 400 videos on YouTube with Bigfoot and other crazy shit. I'm already there." But it makes people feel. You got to be able to talk to people about it too, and not be an asshole to them. You know.
Exactly.
And I learned a valuable lesson when I was first starting off to not judge people because they may be a fruitcake or whatever. Because most of the time, the people that has them on the property for real, you know. And it's I don't know. And everybody, you know, I got a report 2 days ago with a place that I'm very familiar with. The guy saw a Bigfoot, retired Alabama state trooper, cross the road, and he swears up and down, Brian, will not change his story, that it had a tail. Have you ever heard anything like that? I've never heard one with a tail.
I have not heard of one with a tail.
But here's the thing. I believe that if it uses the bathroom a lot and it has long hair, that could seem like a tail. You know, and in a lot of the reports, I talked to Kelly Shaw a lot from the Rocky Mountain Bigfoot Organization. And, you know, a lot of his reports are they're looking in tent windows, looking in camper windows, looking at van windows. And I'm like, holy shit, I would die if I'm 2 inches from my plane looking out the window and there's a big-ass creature right on the other side. I mean, golly. My friend Bob, Trent, and Dwight, you know, they work Uwharrie a lot. And they have some crazy pictures, like a man standing on the ridge, in the next second of the frame, it's gone. It's like, holy shit. Do you get that a lot with Uwharrie about it's kind of like a strange place?
Oh yeah. You get that with the Sasquatch encounters, and then it's, well, let me tell you about this. And that's usually after the recorder's off, and they're like, well, I didn't really want to say this, but I've seen some crazy shit out there. And they start telling their stories, and I'm like, oh my God, you know.
Well, that's crazy, because Bob has been wanting me to come out, and when I come out, I need to get you guys together and talk with them, because they're like me. They do a lot of stuff with audio, and they'll go out there and let their recorders just run for hours. And he's put in his time. I mean, he's just I've got to get out there. If I do, I'll hook up with you, call you too. Get you out there.
Oh, absolutely, cool. Man. I'm a couple of hours away from there, and I've already started planning a summer trip at some point in time. I've got Lee and Bobby up there that do a lot of field work, and they've invited me up, and I've got to make time to get up there because I really want to go up and have some of the experiences that they've had. They've had some wild encounters, man. Let me ask you something else that's sort of out there with when we're talking about the weird, crazy shit. What do you make of Dogman? the Dogman encounters. Do you take any of those encounters, or have you experienced
Oh yeah,
those?
I've worked 4 or 5 cases of Dogman. I think it's a werewolf, basically. I think it's exactly what it's an old school werewolf. The reason why I've worked a case off and on the last couple of years in Clanton, Alabama. In 1962, there was a Baptist minister in Clanton, Alabama, that had something in his chicken house. He came out with a shotgun, shot at it, it turned and looked at him. The most distinguishing feature of this creature was it had a snout like a canine. This guy lost his church, lost pretty much everything in his life because he stood by his story, and he stood by his story. So fast forward to now, a county sheriff who is the county sheriff of a big municipality in Alabama called me. It was his dad, right? Wanted to just kind of give his mom some closure before she passed. The dad had already passed. Started investigation, been at probably 3 or 4 years off and on, a couple of times a month. And I have footage of something running across a field with a snout. Also, on the backside of their property is some people that have lived in the community for 50 years. Guess where they're from? Romania.
Oh, wow.
All of that area where there's a lot of old magic. Now, if you go on this guy's land that's still in the family to the land that backs up these people from Romania, you will see all of these woven stick things 100 feet apart that these people have made to ward whatever is on that land off. I made a joke one time and destroyed one and went and told them, and I thought they were going to beat my ass. I thought they were going to put a curse on me because they're like, Mr. Odom, we have that up for a reason. And I'm not being mean, mimicking their voice, but they got on to me. I've seen it. I've heard it. Sometimes I can almost feel it because it's a raw, evil. You know, as a police officer, when you come up to bad scenes where there was some evil that went on, you can feel that. I don't care who you are, you can feel that. And this guy, they're going to put the land up for sale because they're freaked out about it and what's on it. Now, the house that's on the land, been there 70 years, has all kinds of paranormal shit happen. What I think it is, we don't practice real magic anymore in this world because we've got so many distractions. Old magic, like with Aleister Crowley in the Baltic states, where there were gypsies and there were real things, was a different type of magic. That magic invoked a person changing, basically like a demon possession and transforming. The footage that I got, it freaked me out because I knew there was somebody in my age practicing old magic. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely, man. I talked to a lady probably 2-3 weeks ago. She was the first interview that I've done that had an experience with Dogman. And we went back and forth for weeks before she was really comfortable coming on the show and telling her story. But she's had 5 encounters with these things throughout her life. They started as a child, and it was some pretty out there stuff. Her show should be coming up here in the next month or so. I'll be posting that episode, but she had some really wild stories about how this went down. And every time she described basically the exact same thing. It was, like you said, it's like a werewolf, you know?
Yep.
And
Yep.
I've always wondered, you know, in some of these accounts, and I think just like in the paranormal realm, right, you can have misidentification. Some people might think something's a ghost and it might actually just be an orb, or you might think it's an orb and it's actually a UFO. So I guess there's misidentifications even in paranormal things. And I've often wondered if people were actually seeing some weird subspecies or some weird type of Sasquatch as opposed to it actually being like a half man, half dog.
Oh, yeah. Well, I had, before we get done, I want to tell you another quick story, a minute story about a lady that was something else. But yeah, you're right. I've had an encounter with like a Wendigo or something that I posted on YouTube, but on the background of the footage down by the creek where I'm at, you can see this thing with horns. The same feeling I got with this werewolf case, I got with that thing. It was an overwhelming presence of evil, and it felt like that somebody had a Kalashnikov AK-47 centered on my chest, and I couldn't see them, and they were just to pull the trigger. It's almost like, holy shit, drop everything and run, which I've never did that, but it's almost to the point that I have a hard time managing the fear, and I've done some crazy shit. And that's what bothers me. I feel that a lot in Holland. I think that thing that's there, and I'm saying thing, has killed people, killed several human beings. And whenever it's in the air, I don't know. I just pray the Lord opens my eyes and gives me a warning saying, get the hell out of there.
Yeah, that's the one common theme with every Dogman encounter I've ever heard, and even with the one that I took with the witness that I interviewed, is that sort of demonic type of feeling that comes over people. It's never good. It's never a good experience.
Yeah. Well, and I was interviewing this lady in Anniston one time, and she had Bigfoot on her property. She had UFOs. She had ETs. I mean, the gamut. And I thought she was a total bullshit artist till I sit down and had the camera 6 feet away from them, and I'm looking her dead in the eyes, and her eyes changed like a lizard 2 times. And I'm like, and I paused, and she said, "Oh, you saw that, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Let me do it again." And she did it again, Brian. I forgot about this story. I almost shit my pants. I hope you don't have to mess that up. I hope I didn't mess you up. But, dude, I still got that video. Me and my wife watched it the other day. So tell me what that was. Was that a reptilian or what the hell? I mean, it's like, holy. And the reason I discontinued her investigation is because every time me and my team and my wife would go on their property, something happened to the vehicles. There was lightning struck in a broad-ass daylight without a cloud in the sky close to us. John almost fell and broke his leg. And we got to just having a foreboding. Like, no, we shouldn't be here. I don't know what's going on, but no, this ain't for us. And that's really one of the first investigations. I said, well, we won't be back. You've got Bigfoot. Congratulations. Here's your plaque. We're done. And I've had shit following me home. I mean, but I stopped that because I started doing my protection before I got in the car, saying, hey, you're not here. You're not going to come home with me. Stuff will happen.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that has fascinated me the most, and there's so many tangents I want to go on, but people in the Bigfoot community and just the paranormal community in general, you know, it's so fascinating to me that we're talking about some of the weirdest shit that you could ever talk about. And people get on this camp of, if you don't believe what I believe, or if you think that's real, you're crazy, but this is okay. It amazes me how people are so close-minded. And it's like I said, I like everything on the show. You know, if you've had a weird encounter of any kind, let's talk about it, because people are seeing some crazy stuff, and they're truly, like you said, there's some bullshit artists out there, right? I've come across a couple of them, and you can smell that a mile away. And you know that they're just making it up because they want their 5 seconds of fame or whatever the case may be. But 99.98% of the time, everybody I talk to is very genuine. Most of the time they're distressed about what they saw because they can't put it in a box. There's PTSD involved. And I take every story and I put it out there, and I just say, you know, to the audience, hey, here it is. You be the judge. You know, I'm just the conduit. I'm bringing these people's stories to you for you to make up your mind.
Exactly. And I like talking to a lot of law enforcement. They have the best stories. And if you can talk to them and they know you're not going to mess up their career or do anything crazy. Me and Richard, my good friend Richard, from Birmingham, that's fixing to retire, he knows 10, 12 guys. He said, hell yeah, they'll talk to you. He said, we talk about a lot of stuff, and we wink at each other. He said, but there's some guys that see some crazy shit. And you in law enforcement, too, somebody explained to me the other day that they get real nervous around police officers. I said, man, don't have to be nervous. Well, I'm just afraid. Well, you know what? They deal with 99% bad people, and when they get one person, even if it's a minor traffic violation, they're going to be nice. And then she got pulled over, and she's like, oh, yeah, you're right. That's what they're human beings. Come on here, don't. This anti-cop climate we're in now, fuck that, you know?
Yeah, that was one of the toughest things about the job, is people just didn't see you as a human being. They just saw the uniform, and they didn't see the person behind it. And cops are just like everybody else. But I've had one police officer on the show so far. Great interview. He was clearly sane, and he was actually, I was very shocked that he wasn't afraid to put out there, you know, I didn't exactly give his badge number and exactly where he worked, of course, but he was okay saying, hey, I'm a cop and I saw Bigfoot, you know, and it's so fascinating to me. I hear some of the wilder stories, and I had a guy on recently that told me he experienced a chupacabra.
Oh yeah, I've heard of some of them. Yeah,
and I was like, and he didn't want to tell me about it. He was like, I said, is there anything else? Have you ever experienced anything else weird? And he's like, well, yeah, but I don't want to tell you the story and take away from the fact that I actually saw a Sasquatch twice, because he didn't want people to think he was crazy and not believe his Sasquatch story because he had also seen a chupacabra. And I'm like, that's not happening with me, dude. I mean, I'm sure somebody's going to listen to the show and say, oh, that's bullshit, that's crazy, whatever, but not me. I mean, who's to say it's not crazy that you saw a 10-foot, 1,500-pound ape in Washington? I mean, that's pretty crazy for somebody who's never seen one, right? But it fascinates me that people see these things. And a lot of people, I interviewed a guy from California. I think his show's coming up. I'm putting it out next week. He was on a date with this chick. They're sitting out in a park, and this Bigfoot comes crashing through like 15, 20 feet away from him out of the woods. And he's like, holy shit. And he tells me this story, and his story goes for about 10, 12 minutes. And I mean, it was really quick. He was a great witness. And then I stopped the interview and we start talking. And I even said it during the interview. I said, dude, I've never heard anybody tell me that a Bigfoot was running from something. Because in the story, you'll hear him say, it looked like a mountain lion chasing Bigfoot. Yeah. And I was like, I've never heard of a Sasquatch running from anything. And once the interview was over and we're chatting, his interview took 12 minutes. We ended up staying on the phone for 2 hours after the interview. And he said that what was chasing the Bigfoot looked like a mountain lion of sorts, but about 8 times bigger than what you would imagine a mountain lion would look like. Yeah. And he said literally this girl that he was on a date with, that like it took 12 seconds for them to say, wow, that was a Bigfoot. But what the hell was that? Yeah. And he was clearly credible. And he told me that, I asked him after we had all this conversation, I said, do you mind if I tell the rest of that story as a prelude to your episode? Because I didn't want to go back and record him. I was like, if you're okay with me telling that, I'd like to tell that sort of the prelude for the episode. And he was like, yeah, I'm okay with it. I just didn't want you to think I was crazy. And I'm like, and he told me about this weird encounter he had with this, what he perceived to be an alien female that was parked in the parking lot when they had this really strange interaction with. She was almost like he described her as being almost plastic-like in appearance and the way that she interacted. It was just weird. The whole thing was weird. But he didn't want to tell me that either.
Exactly. Well, there's a little, once you get people talking, it's like, and I think I don't do a lot of podcasts anymore. Yours, I did one a couple weeks ago, and yours, because I listen to yours a lot. I like your stuff. And I don't think people know how to really talk to people. I like that you're a good interviewer. That's a compliment to you. Thank you for that.
I appreciate it.
And just I went on a group. I don't know. This was years ago, and one of the guys started arguing with me. And I'm like, "Hey, this is your podcast, dude. I'm not arguing. I'm in." But it was just an odd. It's just like Southern ministers that are their wives working and they're at home, take care of the kids, and are like, okay, there's 1,000 of you, like 1,000 other Bigfoot hunters. I don't have totally no respect for you, And I don't know. I threw that in there, so that was free.
I definitely appreciate it.
I'm like you. I can't stand fake preachers and fake Bigfoot hunters.
Yeah, there's a ton of both out there, and I think when you come across, like I said, I heard you on another show, and I was like, I have got to talk to that dude because he's the real deal. You can just tell.
Well, I mean, I don't bullshit, and I had to stop looking at a lot of the comments on YouTube because I took it personal. Because I'm the type, I had a guy at Pell City Walmart, he had cussed me out or something, and he come up to me, and he's like, I'm there with my wife, and he's like, hey, man, I see your channel, I like it a whole lot, but I want to talk to you. You cussed me out when I first started. I did. I just cussed people out. And I said, yeah, do you want me to cuss you out to your face? And he's turned so red. But I'm like, dude, don't come up to me. I have people holler at me all the time, and hey, Mr. Odom, love you. And I'm like, hey, cool. My wife is like this. She said, Jonathan, you look kind of retarded when they do that to you. You're the one making the videos. Because it catches me off. It just catches me off guard. But this dude, he just pissed me off. I'm like, nah, fuck you. I'm gonna cuss you out to you. And I'm not being mean, but I'm that type of guy. I'm not gonna back down from you. Or just, and I don't know. I just shoot straight from the hip. So
yeah, and that's why I wanted you on the show, man, because that's refreshing. You. It's really refreshing in a just a sea of bullshit. It's great to have somebody that calls it like it is and does the real work. It's like you said, you actually get out and you do the real work. And that's, I sit behind the microphone and listen to people's stories. That's the easy part. But people actually out there getting the evidence and walking the walk, I have tons and tons of respect for. So,
thank you. Well, and it's summertime. You know what happens in summertime? I put my snake garters on and I went through 4 or 5 pair of them. And I just, I don't know. I find a lot of redemption and peace in the woods. I can get out there and within 30 seconds, I'm listening. I can tell what's off in the woods. And sometimes that is freaky. I was at a place a couple of weeks ago, real far back off the Pinhoti Trail. There's no houses within 40 miles of this place. And I hear this little kid just laughing. And I hop back, I follow the stream in, cutting for tracks, and there is nobody out there but me. I did a big circle. Usually I do a big circle. I'll sit a couple hours. And I hear this little kid. And I'm like, that's a fucking kid. I got it on audio recorder and on my video camera. And it's a kid laughing, and then it stopped. And you're like, oh, and that night I was going to stay till like 8 or 9. Hell no. As soon as it started getting dark, hell no. Hell no. I mean, because I see a lot of weird stuff that's not Bigfoot. And it's easy to explain, but there's certain things, and I felt fine. I didn't feel fearful. I didn't feel like I was going to be ambushed. It just was creepy as hell.
Yeah, man, I draw the line at creepy kid stuff. I can't do it.
Oh, yeah. I had a dude follow me one time. There, at Hunting National Park, there's a lot of rainbow people, and they're basically hippies that travel around to the festivals. And I had this guy started following me. And within 1,000 yards, 1,000 yards, I knew he was behind me because I use my thermal during the day. I sweep my back because I've caught creatures doing that. I've caught them several times flanking me. Well, I see this dude, and so I get in a bend where he totally don't see me, and he comes running out, and I have my gun drawn. I said, what are you doing? And he about shit his pants, but I also told him, don't be following me out here. Don't dare, because I will shoot you out here and call the Rangers. And I've had some crazy experience with people, but I put the fear of God in them real fast. And I said, hey, I was not mean, but you're not gonna flank me.
Yeah, that's not smart.
Shit in the woods. Huh?
I said, yeah, that's not smart to flank somebody in the woods. That's not a good idea.
Well, and especially somebody that's carried a gun their whole career like you carried. I know how to use it. I will use it. And I had a juvenile Sasquatch follow me one time, and I thought it was a kid just messing with me. And I got it on camera. Saw its facial features. It had the most human face of anyone I've ever seen. Freaked me out. Again, freaked me out because there was an intelligence in their eyes that you could compare the intelligence to a lion. If you're out there, you could be visible and look at it, surveying its terrain, and And that one was a very cool experience. That one shook me to my core. I come home and didn't do anything for 2 days because I thought about it. I even prayed because I was like, oh, because allow me to be retarded for a second. I've hunted a lot of them. I've seen 2 juveniles, but the rest of them have been big ones. You just don't assume that they're little at any time. I don't know why. It's like a mental fart or what. But then when you see one, you're like, holy shit, there's little ones out there. And I know that's dorky to say, but most of the encounters are big ones.
And it's true. I mean, I've talked to a couple of people. I just talked to Kathy Strain last night, and Kathy has seen out at Area X, she saw a baby Sasquatch that looked like a chimpanzee. And she talked about seeing it, and she's like, oh, there's a chimp. And she's having this moment and then she had this oh shit moment wait, Kathy, there's we're in Oklahoma. There's not chimpanzees in Oklahoma. That's a baby Sasquatch. So, but you don't hear a lot of those encounters. Like you said, it's always the, 8-foot alpha males that these people are seeing, or it's Patty, walking across the sandbar or whatever. But clearly these things are breeding, or there wouldn't be a population for us to continue to see them over and over, year after year after year. So yeah, the small ones have to be out there. But like you said, I imagine that would be very freaky, especially if it had a human-like face.
Well, I go to a creepy mountain, which I find an episode Bigfoot was filmed there. It's a hunting preserve. I've got 4 or 5 of them on the property. One of the sweetest old ladies that made the best pecan pie you ever eat told me a story. When Mr. Odom, they were on their side by side going through, and she had dropped her husband off and was going up the dirt road. And she said, Mr. Odom, that thing swung through the top of the trees like an ape. And turned around and looked at me and just went on his way. And there's no way in hell this woman's lying to me. But she's exactly like you said, a chimpanzee swinging through the tree. And once I started getting them reports, I got more. That's what's weird about it. It's almost like it follows a synchronicity or something. And then I didn't get any more. But every once in a while I get one. I seen it right through the trees. But we don't think about that,
Yeah, man, I really do appreciate you coming on the show. I'd love to have you back. I know are you going out on more, you got investigations planned?
I go, we went to the mountains last week to Gatlinburg. There's a case in Sevierville that I've been working the last probably 5 years. She's actually selling her property too because they're getting out of hand. I go out every day pretty much. I go out and check the audio recorders or just I leave my thermal out a lot of times. I got GPS tracking on it. So I'll leave it out there, put it on my battery pack, and I'll film an area for like 14 hours straight. It's badass. They get some cool shit. I get people wandering through, and they don't have no clue I'm there. And so it's every day, but I always have time to talk to good people. I make time because I'll spend the first half of the day usually fielding calls, emails, messenger, and talking to people, and then I go out. So yeah, anytime, man.
That's awesome, man. Well, I can't thank you enough for your time, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing. We'll definitely have to have you back.
Yes, sir. Just whatever you need, just give me a call, and hopefully one day we can just get the sucker to be still and get it on camera more.
Absolutely. And that's it for tonight's show, folks. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a fantastic week. Remember, if you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. Get me at Brian@SasquatchOdyssey.net. Have a good one, folks, and we'll see you guys next week.